Hey folks, welcome to another edition of Fitness Friday Posi-TIPS with Rachelle. It is great to be back here with you today. And as we're nearing towards the final stretch of this marketing series we talked about the 4 P's of marketing, talked about the ADA model, talked about promotional examples, price, placement, all of that. This has been a very meaty series. In this particular episode, I'm going to be focusing on the value of diversity and inclusion. And yes, there are marketing ramifications to that. We'll get to that in a minute. But I wanted to kick off this episode by highlighting something that I mentioned in the last episode. Towards the end of that episode is I highlighted an exemplary example of leadership. I'm very passionate about leadership. Leadership development is what I do, professional level, but also on a personal level, just deeply passionate about leadership. And I'm always on the lookout for exemplary leadership, and I'm always recognizing, whenever necessary, exemplary examples of leadership. And so Lawrence, highlighted Lawrence. My first visit was at July 19th to the Rochester Hills, Michigan location of Planet Fitness. So on that adventure, witnessed, observed that man actually absolutely killing it from a cleaning perspective. And we're going to talk more about that next time, but don't want to take too much time on this episode kind of going through all of that. We'll next time, but I actually have a rule. You've heard me talk about this rules in terms of who I'll do which club I'll do a member survey for, which ones I won't, and some of the criteria that I've created in my own mind to be objective, to be fair, as much as humanly possible. And so I have a rule that says, hey, I like to visit a club at least twice in order to do a member survey, because I'm looking for consistency. Like, yeah, a club may be killing it one day and then the next time have fallen off. So I like to see consistency. If I go back and see that the second time they're killing it the second time, oh, there's a pattern there. Okay, there's something there. But I do have an obscure rule where if I go in and I experience something that is so exemplary, and you know me, I'm always doing the positive outliers. Most people, the bell curve, most people, organizations, entities, facilities fall in the middle, the mean, the average, yeah, that's wonderful, mean, median, average, but I'm always looking for those positive outliers. And so, I do have an obscure rule that now I've only used twice, and that if I see something so exemplary, I do a survey, even only after one visit. And I'm happy to report that Lawrence, that assistant manager at that particular club, has joined Erica, who's at the front desk, in May of 2018 at the Evanston, Illinois club, home of Northwestern University. In May 2018, I did the same thing on a survey for her, but I'll talk more about that next time. But it was bothering me so much because then I thought to myself, okay, so outside of the fitness industry, if you would have observed this in Walmart, CVS, other places, and that's absolutely, when I see something like that, I absolutely will send positive feedback to corporate. Do it whenever, of course, it's warranted, but I certainly, when I see a manager, assistant manager, and Lawrence was an example of that. Just had to recognize that, but wanted to just highlight that. I know I said last episode I didn't do a survey, and I really thought, and it was really bothering me, and I said, you know what, this man needs to be recognized. So we'll talk more about that, but I'm happy to report I did recognize that. But so, folks, moving on in here, shifting gears and moving towards this important topic of the value of diversity and inclusion. The value of diversity and inclusion, folks. We live in a world now, we live in a society now where diversity and inclusion is so important, and is something that's highlighted in all facets of society. And so I always want you to be ahead of the curve in each and every aspect, as much as is humanly possible. I mean, none of us is perfect, no facility is perfect, no leader is perfect, no leadership team is perfect, but we can all do our best to strive to be fair and equitable, particularly from a diversity and inclusion perspective. So think about diversity, and yes, you often hear it talked about in terms of race or ethnicity, and yes, that's important, but diversity, creating cultures of diversity and inclusion, is so much more than that. I mean, we could talk about diversity of upbringing, socioeconomic status, yes, the demographics, the psychographics, in terms of, there's just so many different ways you can slice and dice diversity and inclusion. And so I just wanted to start this episode out with just on a broad scale, just challenging you to think about where you stand in terms of your diversity and inclusion, how diverse and inclusive is your culture. Now, you may be in a very small town where it's just not diverse and it's homogeneous, and there's just not a lot of differentiation between the people and all of that. And so that's one thing. Unless you're looking to relocate to a different location that may be more diverse and all of that, and you can create that type of culture, that's one thing. But I'm talking about those who are in situations or in locations, geographies, where that is certainly possible. But you want to, and even that person who may be in an area where there's just not a lot of diversity or any of any type, people may be predominantly of all one religion, and how inclusive is your facility to perhaps people of other religions or no religions, or there's just different things like that, or backgrounds or socioeconomic status. So there's just so many different ways we can slice and dice diversity and inclusion, but it doesn't matter what type of facility you are. Public, when I say public, I mean community, private, franchise, YMCA, corporate gyms. This is something that you cannot ignore, because in this age, and I've talked about it countless times here over the last few years, the value of social media and online reviews can absolutely hinder the success of your business like nothing else. If people feel judged, if people feel discriminated against, if people feel that you don't have inclusive environments, you better get ready for blowback. And this is something you always hear me talk about, this old adage that I used to hear, just this old saying in the corporate world, and people say it all the time everywhere, but I first heard it ad nauseum in the corporate world when I was in sales. Control what you can control. And I used to hate hearing that. It seemed like anybody with any type of management or leadership title always used to say that. But years later now, I see the benefit and the beauty of what they were saying. All right, there's so much you can't control in the fitness industry in terms of competitive threats that may exist in the marketplace and all of that. But there's so much that you can control, and the type of culture and environment that you create is something that cannot be underestimated, folks. So just do your best. And I wanted to highlight something, and this here is from the Novi Public Library. So this is one of their giveaways. I went to an event there a few weeks ago, and they were giving away these cups. But I think that the more important thing that it says at the bottom is inform. Their tagline: inform, inspire, and include. And that third point, include. All right, and so the strategic plan, Julie Farkas is the library director, absolutely outstanding director. Now, I'm a voracious reader. I love libraries. I'm a nerd for life. I've been in a lot of different libraries in many different states and other countries. And I tell you, if we don't have the best library here in Novi, we have an outstanding library. It's just wonderful. It's received a number of awards. But in the strategic plan a few years ago, one of the points that Julie, doing the research and surveying, folks that come in, residents, citizens of the city of Novi, and those that frequent the library, the diversity aspect, that point came up and said, we need to be more inclusive. Novi is a very diverse environment, diverse city. What can we do to become more inclusive? So that became a major point in the strategic plan, and so that has been a focus. There have been a number of positive changes I've seen over the years. My 10-year anniversary of buying this condo here in Novi, September 2009. And so when I think about almost 10 years later, how much that library has grown, particularly around this area of inclusion, making sure folks, we have this is a very multicultural city. And so this was something that she, in her leadership, and of course the board of directors of the library, made a priority. And that's one thing that's often true, particularly with human nature. Unless something is made a priority, it often doesn't happen or falls by the wayside or this and that. And so when it became part of that strategic plan, so many positive changes. We have typically a monthly cultural program where different countries are highlighted, and they bring in guest speakers and food and music and other cultural activities based around that particular country. That's an example of something where, again, folks can come and learn about different cultures, and people can learn about some of the predominant cultures that exist here within our city of Novi. But just a wonderful example of a public institution that says we have to be more inclusive. And that became a priority, and it has been with wonderful results. So just wanted to highlight that example. With shifting gears here on to the Detroit Tigers. Detroit Tigers, They're just have a number of community affiliations and involvement and all of that. But even the Detroit Tigers, you can see here, this is a fall brochure of 2019 of the Arab American National Museum, a national institution of access. But what you see here, which you probably can't see, but it's right there here in the top corner, it reads Arab American Night at Comerica Park, Tuesday, August 6th. Free shirt with ticket purchase. And so there is the, Old English D and then some Arabic writing under that. And so even the Detroit Tigers have decided we have to be inclusive. We have to be inclusive. They also had a Jewish night earlier this season. And so they are working and doing different, multicultural nights and things like that. They are working on being more inclusive. I mean, not only just from just a point of an integrity and just being cohesive and kind of creating community cohesion, but it's just the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do. Just from an ethical standpoint, from a moral standpoint, but also, yes, from a business standpoint. You want members, and this is a marketing series, so I haven't talked about this, but I'll just highlight it quickly, this concept of market segmentation. Okay, and so folks, multicultural customers, particularly if you are in a very multicultural city, such as Detroit, for example, all right, leaving out segments of the population is not good for business. So you always want to be as inclusive, as welcoming as you possibly can. So a Major League Baseball team, and others do the same thing, but I live here in Detroit, and I just wanted to highlight that as an example of things going, in a positive direction. So I also have an example here of a athletic business article that also is talking about the value of inclusion and diversity. So Andy Berg, the title of this article, Andy Berg wrote it, Little League umpire approved to work from wheelchair. And so I'm going to read not all of it, but just some of the snippets that are really important. Little League players in Maine got a lesson in possibility and inclusion when a longtime umpire showed up to the girls' all-star game between South Portland and Westbrook in a wheelchair. Jamie Erskine, who told the Portland CBS affiliate that he's been around baseball his whole life, was diagnosed 4 years ago with polyarteritis nodosa, a rare disease that restricts oxygen and blood flow to major organs. Erskine, who has worked the Little League World Series in Portland, Oregon, hadn't been on the field since his diagnosis. That changed this spring when he received a letter from Little League International approving him to umpire from his chair. When she told me I was approved to umpire again from my chair, I cried. I was just so happy because I was getting back a part of my life I thought was over. Bill Finley, a longtime umpire and current district administrator, put the wheels in motion to get Jamie back on the field. Lastly, he's been a great volunteer and an umpire for 23 years, Finley said. So I'm not going to read the rest, but just wanted to make that point. So you have someone here very passionate about umpiring. 23 years he's dedicated of his life to fulfilling that role. And you have now his ability, because obviously some health complications that were beyond his control that caused some problems through a kink in his umpiring plans, but someone recognized the value of diversity and inclusion and made sure and advocated for him to help him regain that seat, figuratively and of course and literally, as an umpire again, regardless of his being in a wheelchair now. Wonderful. So Little League International, again, all of these major organizations, major institutions, major corporations. We have a number of major corporations, particularly your Fortune 100 companies, and even all the way up to Fortune 500, that have created positions. Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion, Vice President of Diversity, Senior Vice President of Human Resources and Diversity. I mean, there's just so many different titles now that have emerged where organizations, corporations, and entities are recognizing the value of diversity and inclusion. And so we think about diversity and inclusion, it's just the right thing to do, as I stated before. But I want to, and this of course, yes, a marketing series, but this is also a leadership series. So what I want to do is challenge your thinking as leaders to recognize the value of not only diversity and inclusion, but also valuing diversity of thought. Diversity of thought, because that's also true. You know, you may have a bunch of yes men and yes women on your team that are reporting to you, and I mentioned this in a previous episode. You got to recognize, you know, my role here, I'm here to tell you the truth. I'm here to help you, and that's, you know, that's just my goal, and that's my role, and that's it, you know. But people that are reporting to you and that have paychecks that are depending upon your approval of them, don't expect them to tell you the truth, you know. And of course, I don't mean like just, you know, lie constantly, but many times in that type of position, particularly in the workplace where people's jobs are at stake, it is easier to tell a boss or a group of bosses what he or she or they want to hear. Quite frankly, we know this is true. We've all been there. If we're honest with ourselves, we've all been there and done that. Because, you know, if a boss is gung-ho about something, even though you know that boss is about to run into a brick wall and it's a bad decision, it takes a rare person with a lot of courage and a lot of confidence to say, you know what, boss, you are absolutely going in the wrong direction. This is a bad idea. You know, very few people are going to do that because they don't want to jeopardize their job and their income and all of that. So you got to recognize. So if at all humanly possible, encourage people to tell you the truth. You know, we hear about, you know, create safe environments where candor is valued, where people know that if they tell you the truth, particularly if they're helping you to avoid a bad decision or monetary financial loss or something like that, that truth is valued, that truth will not be penalized as it so often is. And that's why people learn, just I'll tell a person what they want to hear as opposed to the truth. And so if you can encourage and value that diversity of thought, that will save you a whole lot of headaches and a whole lot of problems, because you won't have a bunch of yes people that just rubber stamp everything. Yes, this is wonderful. Yes, this is great. What it may be, you know, you're running into a brick wall at full speed and no one cares enough, not even cares enough. I shouldn't say that. No one is courageous enough to be honest and tell you the truth, you know, because again, it's just human beings, self-preservation kicks in. Does a person try to preserve their own employment and their own income by telling a boss what he or she wants to hear? Or does that person exude courage and say, you know what? And there's certainly a way to do that, you know, be cordial, be polite, be respectful. You know what, boss, I really thought this through, and I just really want to prevent you from making what could be a very expensive mistake, a costly mistake. But this is what I think. You know, but if that person feels that they're going to be penalized, or they're going to end up on your bad side, or you're going to end up pushing them out of the door, they are not going to do it. Particularly if you have a pattern of doing that and they've seen that happen with other people. You're just going to have a whole bunch of yes people. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, this is great. And there's no improvement, there's no growth, and all of that. So just recognize, if you can encourage that diversity of thought, where you've got people that are willing to challenge the status quo and that are willing to stand up and be assertive if they see a better way, or if they see a way that is a wrong way. That too is creating an environment, an inclusive environment of diversity of thought, of thinking, because that is so important. Because when that doesn't, when a situation lacks that, then that's how these things, these situations that end up going viral, these negative situations and scenarios end up going viral, and that's how folks get in trouble. Organizations, corporations, lawsuits, litigation, all of that. Being condemned in the court of public opinion vis-a-vis social media. And I never want that to be you. And so what I want to do, and so in the absence of those who are courageous enough to speak up, or perhaps an owner, a leader, a manager, management team, leadership team, simply does not solicit any type of feedback, just very conditioned to just do what they want to do and this and that, you end up with some negative scenarios that end up happening. And so what I want to do is highlight a few of those. Here I've got a number saved on my phone, and so I want to highlight a few examples for you, and just to give you a good flavor and feel. So I highlighted this one last year, but highlighting it again. And so this article appeared in the Detroit Free Press. Brandon Patterson published this article, the updated version, February 8th, 2018. And so the title of this article is, "A Gym in Orion Township," so this is one of our Metro Detroit suburbs, "is seeking equality by charging women less than men." All right, so let me scroll on down here. All right, it says, "A gym is lifting the burden of inequality of women by lowering the price tag on their membership. The Gym Lake Orion at 1224 South Lapeer Road in Orion Township ran an ad on the front page of the advertiser saying that they will be charging women 2/3 of what they're charging men for a membership in the interest of fairness. Ever wonder why XY is greater than XX? We do. The gym values its male members tremendously, but we don't value them 1/3 more than our female members, the ad reads. The ad goes on to read that women can join for $20 a month with no initiation fee. The manager and operator of the gym, Rich Garvin, wants to even the playing field for women due to the pay disparity between men and women. It's just difficult to observe injustice or unfairness, said Garvin. I think it's important that we don't sit idly by. If we do, we condone it, and I don't condone it. So, you can get let me skip a line here, and then it says, you can get a $30 a month membership, having a discount, encouraging women to come in an attempt to make it a little easier for them to do so. I think it's a good business practice, just the right thing to do. So, the manager and operator in this situation said, obviously a private gym, hey, I want to create equality, I want to promote equality and fairness. So you're charging women less than men for their memberships, or he did. I'm not sure, again, this is more than a year later, I'm not sure if this is still going on, but I just wonder if there was someone when this decision was made at the table to say, okay, you want to promote equality and fairness, and so you have this idea to charge women less than men. How is that promoting equality and fairness? You know, and I just wonder, like I said, who was at the table when that decision was made? Was there anyone that challenged that decision, that you know, spoke up, or perhaps no feedback was solicited at all? And that often happens too, and then you end up with stuff like this. And this got international coverage and on different websites, and other news outlets picked it up, because you don't want to appear to be, you know, targeting or valuing one particular group over the other. That's just not good for business. That's just not good from a public relations standpoint. And so, yeah, they had people that were in favor of it. They did solicit feedback on it, but they had people that were in favor of it, but they also had people that were not in favor of it. And so it's just controversial. You wanted to try to avoid controversy. And I think when we solicit the input of others, it helps us to get different perspectives on things. This is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think about this? And just see what people say. This is one, it was fairly recent, and some of you outside of Michigan and Metro Detroit may have heard about this one. This one got international coverage as well on all the major news outlets. Okay, so Amir Vera and Holly Silverman, this is actually from CNN, so CNN.com. The title of the article is "A Detroit Festival Charged White People $20 and Black People $10. Then they got hit with backlash." So really quickly, this is a long article. And I'm not going to read it all, an Afrofuturist group says it reversed its decision to charge white people more for tickets to its Detroit festival than black and brown people because they received threats. An artist dropped out, and a ticketing website threatened to unpublish their event. The Eventbrite page for Afrofuture Fest, hosted by Afrofuture Youth, advertised an early bird POC ticket for $10, with POC meaning people of color, and an early bird non-POC ticket for $20. The group defined non-POC as white people. News of the group's charging practices hit social media last week when rapper Tiny Jag said she was unknowingly added to the August event, but agreed to support and perform. Tiny Jag told CNN she was not going to be paid for the performance. Once the rapper caught wind of the press, she said she was triggered. So, yet another example. Negative publicity all around the world. There was a very big controversy around this one. Charging different prices based on race. And I wonder in this situation, yet again, who was at the table when this decision was made? Or was feedback even solicited? Was it a group of yes people that planned this and said, yeah, this will be a great idea, there won't be any blowback or negative ramifications of this? You know, what happened? Yet another example of that happening. And so we're going to go down here to another fitness industry example, another club level example. So the title of this article, this appeared on yahoo.com, so Yahoo Lifestyle, June 13th, 2019. So the title of this article is "Woman Horrified by Gym's Body Shaming Email." Call it what it is, fat. So Carrie Justic, Justic, wrote this article. And so I'm just going to read not all of it, it's long as well. Anytime Fitness is apologizing for an email sent out by one of its franchise owners body shaming members to get in better shape for the summer. The email sent out from the gym's Manchester, Connecticut location was advertised as a call to be comfortable in your skin this summer. However, instead of feeling comfortable, the recipient of the email, Mora Ranka, was horrified by its image. All right, and so it says, I just don't even know where to begin, Ranka wrote when she posted a screenshot of the email to Twitter. Again, negative blowback on social media, folks. In it, the email addressed the warm days of summer ahead and urged members to think about spending time at the beach or lake with family and friends before suddenly taking a turn. Shorts, bathing suits, flip-flops, the smell of suntan lotion, and lots of pictures of you that will be posted online forever. The email read, lots of sucking in, side turns, skinny arm posts, and God forbid, a side pic while sitting down. Still, the message continued to get worse. Take your hand and grab the excess you have on your waist. And it has in parentheses, front, back, sides, into parentheses. It continued, can you pinch it or can you grab it? Well, I want to call it what it is, fat. Immediately after posting, many others reacted similarly to Ranka, saying that the message was not only disappointing, but also dangerous. And there's a number of different screenshots posted where other people were commenting on it, as they often do in social media. One Twitter user even expressed that she's had an experience at an Anytime Fitness gym which she felt body shamed by a trainer. They're horrible. And they quoted this social media post. They're horrible. I quit their gym a few months ago, and one time I was in the gym for 30 minutes, and when I left, one of the fitness instructors said to me, where are you going? You've only been here for 20 minutes. At Hell's Prince, June 13, 2019. Still, Anytime Fitness's national media director, Mark Daly, tells Yahoo Lifestyle that is not the sort of message that Anytime Fitness supports or encourage. In fact, it is the opposite of how we coach Anytime Fitness franchisees to communicate with potential members. We pride ourselves on being supportive and encouraging, never shaming, Daly wrote in a statement. I just spoke with the franchisee owner of the gym and expressed our disappointment. He apologized for his ill-advised attempted humor and promised not to send another similar message to anyone. We will be retraining the owner of the gym to be supportive and encouraging in his message and his actions. Daly confirmed that the message was sent out by the owner of the gym's Manchester, Connecticut location, Sean Pyron, who allegedly thought the message was humorous. Pyron tells Yahoo Lifestyle that he realizes the message was not funny. I'm very sorry about the promotional message that I sent to Ms. Ranka and other former members of our gym. It was a poor attempt at using humor as a motivation for people to lead healthy lifestyles, he wrote in a statement. I realize now that the message was not funny and that it offended many people. I am truly sorry. I've learned from all of this and I will not repeat the mistake. Daly also apologized to Ranka on Pyron's behalf via numerous platforms. So, national chain, Anytime Fitness. Negative blowback based on an email that was sent out. So I asked that same question. Was anyone consulted? Was this email run by any particularly, anyone in a position that could have been more objective, or any people that could have been in a position to be more objective and say, hey, I'm thinking about sending this out this week, want to get some feedback on it, what do you think? Or was this an example of just someone just going full speed ahead, as is often the case, particularly in a franchisee situation, where go full speed ahead, this is what I want to do, here it is, bam. And then we see this negative ramifications that definitely happens in these franchise situations, but as well as corporate. It happens in some corporate locations too as well, things happen, but also in private studios and facilities as well. And so just to combat that, seek feedback. Seek feedback. If there's any potential for any controversy, any blowback, any just negative perceptions. That's one thing I learned as an undergraduate in Louisiana and as a public relations, double major in public relations and Spanish. One thing I learned in my PR classes is they taught us that perception is reality. If perception is reality, if people feel like when they see an email, if they feel shamed or judged, it doesn't matter what your intent was. It's how the receiver perceives that information. And this is true in many different industries on many different fronts. But just Wanted to share that one with you as well. Got it. One last example here that I'll be reading from my iPad, and that is this example appeared in Athletic Business. So Andy Berg, another article, July 2019, pardon me, titled this article is Gym Refuses Member Claims Language as Safety Issue. So this example, long, not gonna read it. Not too long, but not gonna read it all. A Richmond, Kentucky gym is getting pushback after it refused service to a woman over her inability to speak English. Robert Monraga posted to Facebook about his mother's experience at Fitness with Faith, where she was told that she couldn't join the gym if she couldn't speak English because it would represent a safety issue. And then there's a screenshot of a Facebook post, the Facebook post that the woman's son posted. Gym owner Geraldine Tudor confirmed in a post responding to Monraga that Faith for Fitness expects its members to speak English for safety purposes. However, that post was taken down and Tudor later posted an apology. In order to have a more inclusive environment, our policies have been updated to include all women of any nationality for membership, regardless of language barrier, Tudor said in a Facebook post. I deeply apologize for any hurt feelings that I may have caused. Carolyn, owner. The Lexington NBC affiliate spoke with a civil rights attorney who said that private entities such as Faith for Fitness could be exempt from discrimination laws due to freedom of association, where they can then choose to associate with who they want in private conversations. However, another attorney said the gym could be in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Richmond Human Rights Commission said it will be investigating the incident. So I actually just read it all there for context. So example after example after example. You know, what did she run that idea by anyone when she created that? Sounds like that was part of her policy. Did she run that by anyone before she made that decision? that ultimately caused some backlash, and then now you've got some national coverage and international coverage with Athletic Business covering it. Example after example after example, folks. So you don't want any member, any potential member to feel excluded, discriminated against, shamed, judged. Start giving you a number of examples inside and outside of the fitness industry. And I want to highlight here an example when we talk about Crunch Fitness. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. We're going to dig in a little deeper about the judgment-free zone, as well as Planet Fitness. And so, but Crunch Fitness, founded in 1989, and so they pioneered. It's important to note that they pioneered the no judgments philosophy. And so Planet Fitness came along in 1992, and they, of course, is well known as the judgment-free zone. And so what I want to do when you think about just creating cultures, and so that when you think about the no judgments philosophy also stem from a marketing perspective of trying to create an inclusive environment. You know, with study after study, research has shown, you can Google it yourself, but many people avoid the gym or stop going to gyms because they feel judged by other people, by staff, by trainers, whatever the case may be. All right, and so I want to read this example that came from Crunch Fitness. I've highlighted this, last year, but I want to highlight this one again because I think as it goes into this whole diversity and inclusion, judgment type of situation, this is a really good example of that, and I'm going to make some points after I read it. So Mia E. So this is the Crunch Fitness location, if I haven't stated already, in Dearborn, Michigan. So one of our newer locations here in Metro Detroit. And so Mia E. gave this location a 2-star review 11 months ago, and it reads, "It definitely has good machines and things to do, but I don't appreciate the culture that is put out there. It feels like a buff, fit people only gym, despite the fact that a gym can help people get in shape. A lot of people stare at others and seem judgmental. One of the personal trainers I was put with for my kickoff event was acting like the most condescending person, saying things like, 'You're lucky I'm feeling nice because I would have made you break my record on this machine. And I'm surprised you were able to do this exercise.' Perhaps it was his humor, but I do not think that it was the case. I'm going to the gym to get in shape, and I'm feeling judged in that environment for not already being that way by both the patrons and the staff. I am sure they only do kickoff events in an attempt to sell you personal training services and not to simply show you some exercises you can do at the gym. I barely make rent sometimes and felt too pressured to buy, in parentheses, despite me having no money, end of parentheses, and do not feel like I could go back without being hounded about it. I'm glad I got the no contract option. Another $5 parentheses on top of the 40 something yearly fee was worth it not to be stuck there. All right, so response from the owner. Hey Mia, I'm so sorry you had this experience. This is obviously not the way we do business or the culture we want at Crunch. We have members of all shapes and sizes here and try to create an atmosphere where no one feels judged. Our kickoffs are definitely not an attempt to sell training. We have a ton of equipment at Crunch and understand it may be a bit overwhelming to most people, so it is a chance for our coaches to understand your goals and how you can best reach them using the equipment we have. Please email me, and it has the email, so I can personally reach out to you and hear about your situation and have a chance to rectify it and hopefully earn back your business. So we have Crunch, the no judgments philosophy, as I stated, Planet Fitness, judgment-free zone. So both of those entities recognize the value, particularly from a marketing perspective, but just overall, just wanting to do the right thing, to be inclusive, to have all types of body, all body types and sizes and shapes and all of that. But ideally, yes, that works. That's great. That's brilliant examples of aspirational marketing. Yes, the world as it should be. People shouldn't judge. People just accept other people. But as you've heard me state in prior episodes on this, human nature is judgmental. I mean, it just, people judge. I mean, that's just, everyone is guilty of it in some area and facet in life. And it's just tough as a human being to not be judgmental. And so when I think about, these two entities in particular, because they are, of course, the most well-known in terms of that positioning of not being judgmental, of aspiring to create inclusive environments and where people aren't judged and shamed and all of that. But just the challenge of that, anyone in a situation where you're kind of wondering, like somebody may own a Planet Fitness and wonder, like, why are people always criticizing us? And, why are people always feeling judged? And we're the judgment-free zone. And in that situation, I would say, hey, but that's human nature. People judge. Doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what's on your wall, what type of marketing and branding you have. People are going to be people. So my advice in that situation, don't feel bad at all. If you're at Crunch, if you're at Planet Fitness, people are people. They are going to judge. I mean, you can do your best, control what you can control, but there's obviously a lot you can't control, meaning the people that you have coming in and how they respond to other people and all of that. And yes, I'm sure they're blatant examples, and that's when people are, get a good talking to, the member gets a good talking to, or perhaps even, expelled, or their membership is canceled, whatever the case may be. But just people are people. And so recognize that. If you decide you want to start using, people, if somebody comes in for a tour in your gym and you decide you want to say, yeah, people here, it's very, people don't judge, it's very comfortable, this and that, just recognize, it's going to happen. So don't feel like a failure. Don't wonder why people are always still judging and people are criticizing the environment for being judgmental. It is going to happen. It is going to happen. So, but I just wanted to highlight that and also highlight an example or Adam's response to that, an owner's response to that, how, when that happens and how the response or what the response sounds like or looks like. And so wanted to highlight here, I'm going to move on in, and I talked about this last year. I told you we were going to highlight just some thoughts. Shifting gears here in the Planet Fitness, still staying on the same realm of judgments and all of that, just the judgment-free zone at Planet Fitness and the complexity. I developed a case study. Actually, that was late 2017, about 6 months after I joined, and just the complexity of the lunk alarm is the title of the case study. And I'm not going to go into all of that on this episode, but just some top line thoughts on that. And for the lunk alarm, Google it if you don't know what I'm talking about. I don't have time to get into all of that, but the lunk alarm, you could certainly Google it to learn more. And so what the lunk alarm and has ultimately created a lot of controversy for the franchise, a lot of criticism, a lot of controversy. I mean online, offline, YouTube. It's this whole notion of people feeling judged in the judgment-free zone, but also you can see it happens also at the entity that came up with that whole positioning, that developed that positioning of no judgments. Happens at Crunch, happens at Planet, it's going to happen. But I would argue, though, in the case of Planet, where they've gotten in trouble, certainly, in my opinion, obviously not there, but just thinking from a marketing perspective, like if Rachelle was at the table, like what would have been her thoughts when this whole lunk alarm concept, was developed and was getting pitched to us, in the marketing team, whatever the case may be. What are my thoughts on the matter? Very, very candidly and very directly. And so this actually, I printed this out on Google. So if you Google Planet Fitness lunk alarm, you'll get and click on the images, of course, at the top. If you ever Google things, you'll see you have an option for images. So this is an example, and these are actually also other images that are affiliated, and there's a whole lot more than that. But this is what, when you click on one of the images and you print it out, this is what you will see. This is an example. And so you will see these at clubs. And so dress code, many and most, not even many, but most facilities have dress codes. Very understandable. There's reasons for that, absolutely. In all different, protection of the member and their safety and security, but also protection of the equipment, things like that. But I would argue, though, totally understandable. For those, let me just read it just in case you have trouble reading it. So dress code. To maintain our no intimidation environment, please, no jeans, boots, sandals, or string tank tops. Thank you. Fine. Harmless. But I think where they got in trouble was this picture, where you have a picture here of it's not even a symmetrical size bodybuilder. You have a picture that's just way over exaggerated of a bodybuilder here in this corner with we've seen that, like, no smoking signs in different places, and so it has that red line through it. So in essence, how bodybuilders have perceived that to say, no bodybuilders, we're not welcome here, we don't want you here. And so I would argue this would have been a whole different situation, if these signs, just no picture, all of that. And as far as the lunk alarm itself, which is a loud siren, when certain behaviors happen in the gym, a loud siren, can be activated, and that's just the lunk alarm. And don't have time to go into all of that. And so specifically with the lunk alarm, when I think about that, like if Rachelle would have been at the table, Rachelle would have been at the market table when that was pitched. My thought is on this whole discussion of diversity and inclusion, like who was at the table? Okay, so when we think about like this example, you think about the modern fitness industry, particularly in terms of chain. So the modern fitness chain got its start with Gold's Gym in 1965. So Joe Gold paved the way for fitness franchises, this whole chain model that we see predominating even on the boutique side of fitness. Joe Gold, a former bodybuilder, all right? And then you had other chains come along in the 70s, like Powerhouse Gym based here in Metro Detroit, World Gym. There's other gyms like that, but they paved the way for other fitness entities. And so they have felt excluded. Bodybuilders, heavily buff individuals, and it's just been so much controversy and online reviews, and you see it on club, just so many different clubs across the country. I've just seen that because people feel excluded. And so that's why I wonder, like when the whole concept was come up, did no one say on this situation, what was the level of fitness experience of everyone at the table when that decision was made? Was there anyone that could have spoken up and said, are we sure we want to exclude any segment of the population, of the fitness population, particularly those that have been like Joe Gold and those, the bodybuilder types that had, paved the way for us? And I understand that. You don't want Phil to feel intimidated, you don't want Phil to feel judged, but they do anyway. Even with this sign, even with the lunk alarm, you still see complaint after complaint after complaint after complaint. And so that's just my argument, like who was at the table? Like how old were the people at that, what was the average age that would agree that having a loud siren that has the effect, and this is stated on many different online reviews and all of that, of embarrassing people, of shaming people, of making people feel judged, of embarrassing people, humiliating, and people feeling rejected publicly. We tell our, people in our society and in just societies across the world, we teach people the golden rule: treat people as you would want to be treated. And I'm very happy to say I've been a member since June 28, 2017. I've heard the lunk alarm go off once, and it was at the Planet Fitness in Novi, literally a week and a half after I became a member, and I've not heard it since. And so what I think is happening is I think franchisees are recognizing, like, you don't want to run people off for any reason. It is loud, it is annoying, it is disruptive. For everyone else who isn't engaging in any type of behavior that's being penalized by hearing that. But also, it's just, you never want to humiliate people or make people look bad or make people feel bad or be embarrassed. That is not good for business. That is exclusionary when you do that. People accuse, the lunk alarm is discriminated. It's judgmental. All right, and so you don't want people to feel that way. But I just want to know, like, who was there? What was the average age? What was the average fitness level of the people, when this decision was made? With all due respect, because I'm under the assumption that there were great intentions, positive intentions when this was all developed. We're going to create a brand differentiation. We're going to create a lunk alarm, and we're going to have the no intimidation, and it's going to play into that. So I'm assuming good intentions. But was there no one at the table that said, could this potentially be exclusionary and discriminatory to people? I am a child of parents who were born and raised in the Mississippi Delta, Greenville, Mississippi. So my parents were raised during Jim Crow. and I see this, and I think to myself, when I see this, how different is this from the signs that used to hang on, restaurants with the exclusionary language: no blacks, no Jews, no Mexicans. So that's why stuff like this is tough. And if Rachelle would have been at the table, Rachelle would have been fired from that team, because Rachelle would have been raising these concerns. All right, not being negative, not being a Debbie Downer or anything like that, but just having that diversity of thought based on my own experiences. All right, my first graduate degree in Miami. All right, so my focus and my thesis and all of that, very passionate about multiculturalism. All right, so this is not just me speaking just whatever. This is somebody that has researched this topic, is very passionate about this topic. And so my role, even, of course, it was a little bit different when I was on marketing track, but even now, just to help others to recognize the value of being inclusive, particularly around cultures, all right, and you don't want anyone to feel excluded. You don't want anyone to walk in and see a sign or anything, or even people's the verbal language or whatever that they're using that makes them feel that they're not wanted there. That is painful for people. All right, most people struggle with rejection. I tell people I worked in sales for a number of years. I've been rejected thousands of times in my life. So I have a resiliency towards rejection. But most people are not like that. They feel bad, where they feel like they're not wanted, anyway, and then they walk into a facility, and of course you see something like that, and it reinforces that. There's certainly way, and even I think, like, if even in my opinion, I think, what if the lunk alarm would have been named the etiquette alarm? So there's no name, there's no negative, there's no name calling and all of that. What if it had just been the etiquette alarm? Entirely different situations. Like, yeah, people would have been, felt like, oh, I got embarrassed or whatever, this and that. But that's why, you can work around that. You can hire people that are comfortable with confrontation in those instances to say, okay, do I have a decision to make? When somebody throws a weight down, whatever, assume the best. Maybe they didn't know. I'm just going to assume they didn't know, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to walk over and talk to them. And that's why I will always respect Nate Lucier. My very first experience at the Novi Planet Fitness, that was October 2014. And I so remember there was this young guy. I mean, I was bigger than he was. And he was on the cable machines, and he's doing the cable rows. And I remember exactly where I was. And he was going, ah! And I remember, like, you didn't hear stuff like that at Powerhouse. And he's going, ah! And then, of course, I looked over and said, I want to know how much weight, because there's just not enough weight that he could have been lifted on the cable row machine to be doing that. So I looked over, and it was 50 pounds. But what did Nate do? Walked over. Compassionate confrontation. Talked to the young man. He stopped. But again, the people in the club weren't penalized for that guy doing that, but also he allowed that guy to save face. And so I think that the trajectory that I'm seeing with Planet is the franchisees are recognizing. I mean, compared to when I first joined in June, looking at different clubs across the country, those Google and Yelp reviews, I do not see people complaining about the lunk alarm like I used to see even more than 2 years ago. So I think they're kind of recognizing that. Like, we have a decision to make. Do we want to run people off, particularly in this competitive environment, or not? And so those are just my thoughts. I just wonder if there had been people at the table to say, is this exclusionary? Is this going to make people feel bad? Is this going to, we have a right motive if we don't want people to feel judged or shamed or anything, intimidated, but will they feel that way if they're the subject of this lunk alarm, if they're the reason why this lunk alarm goes off or whatever, and then everyone in the gym is wondering what happened and they're staring at the person. All right, so I'm just always about, helping people feel whole and good, and that part of that is just my life calling and purpose, where I want people to just be confident, be secure in who they are, let go of the past, no matter what has happened to you, what issues of instances of rejection and humiliation and shame and all of that, you can let all of that go. But in the interim, when people are in fitness facilities, you want to do all you can do to help people save face. Assume the best. And so those are my thoughts on that. And so, and to take that, like I said, I'm seeing a lot of positive things going on with this the lunk alarm, and then just recognizing, you compare years and years ago, I could see the difference where people used to clearly use it a lot more, and it's just not getting used at all, and it just lets me know though that things are getting handled more on a one-to-one level, as it should be for everyone involved, the people working out as well as the person who may have committed the offense knowingly or in many cases unknowingly. Because if your primary target audience is first-time gym goers and casual gym goers, there's a good chance that they don't know that they're not supposed to do those type of things. And so just assume the best in those type of situations, and then that's what will happen. You'll start to see positive results, and those people not giving you 1-star reviews because they were embarrassed or humiliated or anything like that because of something that happened. And so that, folks, are my thoughts on the complexities of the lunk alarm. So just some top line thoughts on that in regard to diversity and inclusion. And then I want to close out with this. As it relates to inclusion, particularly. And so when you think about, I talked about how I do surveys and how that process is, and sometimes there's the extremely positive outliers that challenge my current rules. And things like that, but also want to talk about, when you see me when you really want to know what I think, when you see me do a video, an in-club video, that is a window to my thinking. That means so there's the dichotomy of Rachelle the professional and Rachelle the person, all right? And so many times they overlap, but sometimes they don't. And so membership survey, like I told you, for Planet Fitness in particular, yes, Rachelle, did Rachelle have a good workout, whatever this and that, but also what are the membership survey criteria in this example that Planet uses? So it's a merger or a combination of both of those. All right, so, but when you see me doing an in-club, like on a Fitness Friday, all right, that is purely professional. And that's why, and it is an example when I call it the Princeton of Planet Fitness in West Bloomfield, Michigan. That's an example of that. From a professional standpoint, I've been in that club 7 times. I've been at different day points, different days of the week, different times in terms of early morning, early afternoon, and they're doing a great job. But that is a professional. Where I'm looking at that, yes, not only at the just some of the universal criteria that will be used to evaluate fitness facilities, such as safety zones, potential trip hazards, walkways, all of that, temperature, water temperature, just all of that. So that's an example, when you see me in that instance, of an example of a very intense professional assessment. And as you see me at Bel Air Fitness in Bossier City, Louisiana, I've done episodes over the years from there as well. Same thing, a very professionally driven decision. As well as there was a small window in the summer of June, actually very small window, June of 2015, where I did some episodes for Powerhouse Gym in Novi. And so that it's not an open-ended situation where if things change from a professional standpoint, I'm not highlighting that. I will cease doing episodes, but so I had a small window where I would do those, and so I take that very seriously, because when I'm doing an episode from a location, it is because I want any of you to walk in there, the editor of Athletic Business or Club Industry Magazine could walk in there, just whatever, and just say, yeah, I could see why this particular facility was chosen. It's just very, very, how symmetrical, how symmetric is the layout? Is it lopsided? Is it symmetrical? I mean, there's a lot of my thinking that goes into that when you see me do those episodes. And so, but when I was choosing, just utilize an example. So my 25th anniversary, May 17th, my 25th fitness anniversary, and also my 2-year anniversary with Planet Fitness, June 28th. I did them both from the West Bloomfield location of the Princeton of Planet Fitness. And so when I decided, okay, you know what, I want to do that very first in club I did on my 25-year anniversary in May, and then I made a decision, okay, yeah, I'm going to do an in club from Planet. So which location am I going to choose? I've been to a number of locations. That's actually increased over the course of this summer. I've really started to make my way around all these different clubs and just having a good time, good experience, and good PF adventures. But, so when you think about the professional decision and the very first criteria I used and how it ties into this whole concept of diversity and inclusion, the very first, right, because we got a lot of clubs here in our Metro Detroit area, so obviously I had to narrow that down to clubs that I had been to, but then also very first criteria I used, because we know one thing you see, particularly in the larger locations of Planet Fitness, you'll see judgment-free zone, large letters, no critics, but also you belong. You belong. So again, what does that indicate? Inclusiveness, you belong with a exclamation point after it. So you belong, I belong. And so inclusion, wonderful thing. And so for me, when I think about inclusion, I mean, I'm looking at, like I said, professionally, I'm looking at a lot when I'm evaluating a situation like that. So for me, I narrowed it down pretty quickly and I said, okay, you belong. Okay, even one thing that I've noticed, even, ideologically or politically ideologically speaking, do I belong? So in an inclusive environment, when you think about what is being shown on television stations in the gym, in the absence of, yes, you got, even for Planet, some locations, I've looked in like New Jersey, Orlando, some locations have all their cardio machines have TVs. In the absence of those, you just have the kind of the main TVs that are up there. And so from an inclusion standpoint, so you got your local news, okay, all right. Cable news, are you showing all three options or not? And what I have seen, and this is something that when I remember when I first started going on different Planet PF adventures, I remember thinking to myself, like, are they only allowed to show like these same two? And I'm not going to get into a whole discussion of which ones and which not, because that's just going down a whole path that I don't have time to go down. Like, are they only allowed to show these same two? I noticed that in Novi, and like what's going on? Why is this third one being excluded? Like, what is this? And I've seen this in different states, and I just wondered, like, is this third station banned? Like, what is this? And so that changed when I stepped foot into the Ford Road location in Dearborn, and I saw that actually it's TV number 13, and I said, actually, no, it's not. No, it's not. And I want to highlight the other examples of that. Dearborn Ford Road, as I mentioned, number 2, Bloomfield Township, West Bloomfield, which I call the Princeton of Planet Fitness, Southfield, Michigan location, I've been there twice, like that gym, and Livonia 5 Mile, which is a new entrant that I was so excited. So when you think about, so when I narrowed it down to locations I've been to, and then I narrowed it down further, before I even went further down that professional assessment process, is, okay, if I belong, politically speaking, where do I belong? So where are all three being shown? From the standpoint of when, particularly, and this is a big one, when my fellow Northwestern, I have a leadership role with the Northwestern Alumni Association. I've been very involved with our NU Club, Alumni Club of Metro Detroit. And so I don't do formal gym recommendations. Somebody says, oh, I live in this city, what gym should I join? I don't do that. Never have, whatever. But people will ask with my opinion, I'm thinking about doing such and such, and what I will do is give my opinion, like pros and cons, whatever this and that, with my thoughts, but it's never a formal recommendation. But so when North member of our Alumni Association here, Metro Detroit, or other places ask me, and this is how this inclusion situation is very practical from an influence standpoint, is when people ask me in Metro Detroit, I entertain here at my house and do alumni things here, and when this comes up, I have to give folks a caveat. I have to give you a little caveat to say, okay, in our area, Where we belong politically, because all three are shown, so you will be able to watch your cable news station of choice are Dearborn Ford Road, Bloomfield Township, West Bloomfield, Southfield, and now Livonia at 5 Mile. And so there's other locations, and we have 3,700 alumni here in Southeast Michigan, and so I know that's not going to be a good situation for the person, because they're going to feel excluded. And Rachelle, why did you send me? Then what's going on? And you want to create those type of situations, but also that's going to create some negative reviews for some of these clubs of this isn't fair and whatever this and that. And actually the Ann Arbor Planet Fitness location, we have a large contingent of alumni in Ann Arbor. It is in medical school and other graduate programs in particular. And I've never been to that location myself, but I remember seeing a Google review where somebody was complaining about a lack of that third, cable news station that I was talking about. And I remember thinking, like, man, and then actually corporate respond to that one. And it was very interesting. Their response is that we don't take sides politically, and yeah, that's great, and that's the corporate line. But people feel at the local club level that you do. You're either showing all three to give people an option and not excluding anyone, to be inclusive because you belong, or when you don't have that, people will feel excluded. People will feel excluded, and they do, and I've seen those complaints peppered across different clubs. So when folks ask me, when my fellow alumni peeps ask me, I have to give that caveat. So far, of the clubs I've been into in Metro Detroit, these are your options. This is truly where you belong. And the same thing for me. This is truly, technically, where I belong. I go to the gym. It's always been that way to work out. My primary focus, I'm just working out. Like, I don't care. Most of my gym years, I had no TVs, no access to TVs. So I don't care. I'm driven by my music. But I know a lot of people are. Then what's on the TV? Do I have my option? Whatever this and that. So it's a big thing. And I just know my Northwestern peeps. You don't want to have some activists, and that's exactly what it will be. They're going to be demanding change and demanding equity in those situations, and you need to play all three stations, or even be like the which I call the Harvard of Planet Fitness, the North Pulaski Road location in Chicago, which shows none of the cable news station, following the decision made corporately by Lifetime Fitness. After the 2016 election, Lifetime said all cable news stations and our clubs on the main TVs, not happening. None of them. All right, so that particular franchisee at that Planet, made that decision. It's a very courageous decision, but certainly one that's warranted, particularly in a city like Chicago. And so just think long and hard, about all your decisions. Like, think about will anyone feel excluded? Will anyone feel like they don't belong? Will anyone feel like, there's a reason for them not to be there, whether it's, promotions that you're using, charging people less, charging people more based on their ethnicity, or signs that you may have on your walls, or verbiage. I just want to emphasize this point one last time. If you're not on board with diversity and inclusion, you are way behind the ball. You are way behind the ball. So I challenge you today. What are different ways that you're hiring? Yes, but also just creating inclusiveness. There's so many different ways that company and after company and corporation after corporation, particularly you see it a lot in advertising, getting it wrong, making these big snafus, and then there's a social media backlash, and then all of a sudden the company or corporation or facility is forced to apologize and change course. And so a lot of the problems, and particularly around advertising and marketing and messaging and positioning, if you just ask some other people, particularly some people that are objective or outside of the situation, that are willing to be honest with you and tell you the truth with no fear of ramifications, those type of conversations will help you avoid some very negative consequences, blowback. Because again, when these negative articles are printed about you online, written up about you, or in the local media or even national or international media, remember that stuff is permanent. So some snafu you made 12 years ago that was perceived to be discriminatory will follow you always. And so I always want you to be ahead of the curve, value diversity, value inclusion, recognize how our differences truly make us better. But if you're not doing that, if you're making people feel excluded, you better get ready for a fight. You better get ready for a fight, figuratively speaking. And I always want you to be in a good position, positioned well for success. So think long and hard about what you're doing. Next episode, I'm wrapping up this marketing series. It has been quite a blast. This series has been so meaty as I promised it would be. So I can't wait. So until then, remember, I am positively passionate about your leadership, success, fitness, diversity, and inclusion. Make it a great day.